What kind of general deliberately traps his own army? What kind of madman orders his soldiers to dig their own graves, brick by brick, shovel by shovel, knowing there's no way out? In 52 BCE, Julius Caesar did exactly that. He commanded 50,000 of Rome's finest warriors to seal themselves inside a ring of their own making. On one side, 80,000 furious Gauls screaming for blood behind fortress walls. On the other, a relief army of nearly 300,000 warriors marching closer with every passing hour. No escape, no retreat. Just Romans sandwiched between almost 400,000 enemies who wanted nothing more than to watch them die slow, painful deaths. Now, pause and really think about those numbers. 50,000 against nearly 400,000. Those aren't odds. That's a death sentence written in stone. Yet this supposed suicide mission didn't just succeed. It created the most powerful empire humanity had ever witnessed. By the time we're done here, you'll understand exactly why history's greatest military mind chose to bury his army alive. You'll see how desperation became domination, how a trap became a triumph. Let's go back to Gaul, where everything was about to change forever. For 6 brutal years, Caesar had been carving his name into Gallic soil with blood and iron. Tribe after tribe fell before Roman discipline. Victory after victory filled his war chest and boosted his reputation back home. But here's the thing about conquest. Breaking someone is easy. Keeping them broken, that's a different beast entirely. The Gallic tribes were done being broken. A young Arverni prince named Vercingetorix had accomplished something no one thought possible. He took 40 tribes, ancient enemies who'd been slaughtering each other for generations, and united them under a single banner. Blood feuds that stretched back centuries suddenly didn't matter anymore. Old hatreds evaporated overnight. Because there was something they hated more than each other. Rome. Picture the scope of this coalition. Warriors from the Atlantic shores to the Rhine River, fighters from the Mediterranean coast all the way to the English Channel. Different languages, different gods, different ways of killing, all of them pointing in one direction, all of them hungry for Roman blood. For the first time in recorded history, Gaul spoke with one thunderous voice, and that voice was screaming for Caesar's head. Meanwhile, Caesar had problems of his own. Back in Rome, political vultures circled his reputation. His enemies in the Senate were sharpening their knives, waiting for any sign of weakness. One major defeat, one stumble, and they'd strip his command faster than a wolf strips a carcass. Without his legions, without his victories, Caesar faced exile. Or worse. This wasn't about glory anymore. This was survival. When scouts reported on the fortress of Alesia, any sane commander would have turned around. The position was a nightmare to attack, a natural plateau surrounded by rivers and valleys, high ground that gave defenders every possible advantage, walls that had never been breached, the kind of place where armies came to die. Vercingetorix had gathered 80,000 of his best warriors behind those walls. He probably thought he was untouchable, probably slept well at night, confident that no Roman would be stupid enough to assault such a position. He was about to learn that Caesar wasn't stupid. He was something far more dangerous. Caesar looked at that impregnable fortress and saw something nobody else could see. Yes, Alesia was protected, but those same features that made it impregnable also made it a cage. 80,000 warriors needed food, water, supplies. Every day they stayed inside those walls, they consumed resources they couldn't replace. The fortress that protected Vercingetorix could just as easily become his coffin. Now, here's where Caesar's thinking departed from anything resembling normal. Instead of attacking the walls or starving them out from a safe distance, he ordered his legions to build, not just fortifications, a complete ring around the entire plateau. 11 miles of walls and ditches, sealing Vercingetorix inside like a cork in a bottle. His own generals thought he'd lost his mind. But Caesar wasn't finished. When scouts confirmed that a massive relief army was marching toward Alesia, hundreds of thousands of warriors coming to rescue their trapped brothers, Caesar gave the order that would echo through military history forever. Build a second wall, facing outward. Think about what that meant. Roman soldiers would construct their own prison. They'd seal themselves in a narrow corridor between two armies, each one large enough to crush them individually. The relief force alone outnumbered them nearly 6-1. Combined with the warriors inside Alesia, the odds stretched past 7-1. Caesar's men started digging anyway. The engineering that followed bordered on obsession. This wasn't just walls and ditches. This was a killing machine designed by a genius. 2 trenches, each 15 feet wide and deep. The inner one flooded to create a moat. Behind these, a rampart 12 feet high, topped with battlements and guard towers every 80 feet. 350 towers in total, bristling with Roman steel. But that was just the beginning. In front of the walls, Roman engineers planted what they called gravestones, sharpened logs with branches projecting outward at eye level. Any cavalry charge would impale itself before reaching the walls. Any infantry assault would slow to a crawl, soldiers forced to weave through obstacles while missiles rained down on their heads. Then came the lily pits, 3 feet deep, with sharpened stakes at the bottom, concealed by brush and debris. Thousands of these death traps scattered across the approach, invisible until someone stepped in one. And in front of everything, they hammered iron spikes into the ground at angles. Foot-long metal thorns that would punch through any sandal, any boot, any foot. The Romans weren't building a wall. They were building a graveyard. As September wore on, both sides faced the same enemy: hunger. Inside Alesia, Vercingetorix put his warriors on reduced rations. Outside, Caesar's supplies dwindled with every passing day. 60,000 mouths to feed, and the mathematics were brutal. This had become a race between starvation and battle. Some Roman soldiers started to crack. Centurions reported whispers in the ranks. Men understood courage. They understood fighting against bad odds. But voluntarily sealing yourself in a trap? Building your own tomb with your own hands? That was something else entirely. Caesar responded the way he always responded to doubt, personally. He walked the fortifications, speaking to exhausted work crews, praising their efforts, explaining exactly why they would win. They weren't trapping themselves, he told them. They were creating a killing ground where Roman discipline would annihilate Gallic numbers. By the time he finished, the whispers had stopped. The digging resumed. On September 20th, dust clouds appeared on the horizon. The relief army had arrived. 250,000 warriors, some reports said 300,000, spreading across the landscape like a dark tide. Roman soldiers looked up from their half-finished walls and saw death approaching from every direction. Dawn of the first battle day revealed the full scope of Caesar's gamble. 40,000 Gauls charged the western fortifications, while Vercingetorix coordinated his own assault from inside Alesia. For the first time in history, an army fought a 2-front siege simultaneously. The prepared defenses earned their blood price immediately. Charging warriors hit the concealed lily pits, screaming as sharpened stakes punched through feet and legs. The iron spikes claimed hundreds more, tearing through flesh and bone. Men who avoided the traps had to navigate the gravestones, weaving through obstacles, while Roman arrows and sling bullets found their marks. The sensory overload was absolute. Screams from both directions. Arrows falling so thick soldiers swore the sky went dark. The constant thunder of iron on wood, blade on shield, flesh on flesh. Men went deaf from the noise, fought half-blind through blood and dust, and kept killing because there was nothing else to do. By midday, the northwest section was failing. A Gallic commander had identified a weak point where the fortifications crossed difficult terrain. 60,000 picked warriors hammered against 2 Roman legions, 6-to-1 odds concentrated on a single breaking point. The walls began to buckle. Caesar watched from his command position, purple cloak visible to everyone on both sides. He faced an impossible choice: reinforce the northwest and weaken other sections, or trust exhausted men to hold against overwhelming numbers. He sent 6,000 reinforcements, just enough to stabilize, not enough to strip other defenses. Then he waited. Night brought no relief. Gauls lit torches and kept attacking, fighting in the flickering darkness. Romans stabbed at shapes emerging from blackness, unable to tell friend from enemy. Officers lost control of entire units. Only the walls themselves maintained any sense of order. The lily pits, invisible in darkness, claimed thousands more victims. Men carrying torches became perfect targets for Roman missiles. Dawn of the second day showed the carnage. Bodies piled 10 feet high in some sections. Wounded and dying men carpeted the ground between the walls. But the relief army wasn't broken. Fresh contingents moved forward, stepping over their fallen brothers. Then came the crisis. 2 sections of wall were failing simultaneously. Labienus, Caesar's second-in-command, had been fighting for 20 straight hours. His position was minutes from collapse. At the same time, Mark Antony faced 40,000 Gauls with barely 6,000 exhausted Romans. Both sent desperate messages. Cannot hold much longer. Caesar had insufficient reserves to save both. He was watching his entire army crack at the seams. That's when the Germanic cavalry took matters into their own hands. 4,000 horsemen held in reserve between the walls, charged out a rear gate without orders. They rode hard around the entire battlefield, hitting the Gauls attacking Labienus from behind. Complete surprise. Complete devastation. Caesar made his choice. Taking his last reserves, he split them. Half went to Antony, half followed him personally to the collapsing northwest. And here's the moment that changes everything. Caesar didn't just send reinforcements, he led them himself. Purple cloak streaming behind him, clearly visible to every Roman on those walls. The psychological impact was instantaneous. Exhausted men who could barely lift their shields suddenly found strength they didn't know they had. Caesar comes. The cry spread faster than any messenger could run. Men who'd been fighting for a day and a night prepared for one more impossible effort. What happened in the next 60 seconds decided the future of Western civilization. 3 forces converged on the failing section simultaneously. Labienus's exhausted defenders held the wall. Caesar's reinforcements hit from inside. The Germanic cavalry smashed into the Gallic rear. Caught between hammer, anvil, and horsemen, the attackers had nowhere to go. The slaughter was absolute. Warriors couldn't retreat through the press of their own men, couldn't advance through Roman steel. They died where they stood, cut down in heaps, trampled by their own comrades trying to flee. The relief army saw it happen, saw their best warriors trapped and dying, saw the Roman walls holding despite everything, and they broke. Not a gradual retreat, not a fighting withdrawal. 200,000 warriors turned and ran, abandoning their brothers inside Alesia to their fate. From the fortress walls, Vercingetorix watched his rescue disappear over the horizon. The greatest army Gaul had ever assembled, running like frightened animals. His assault on the inner walls faltered as word spread. Warriors who'd been ready to die suddenly lost all will to fight. Roman cavalry pursued the fleeing Gauls for miles, cutting down stragglers until exhaustion stopped the killing. What began as a battle became a rout, then a massacre, then silence. Dawn of the 3rd day brought surrender. Vercingetorix made his final choice the night before, sitting with his chieftains while their people starved. Some wanted to fight to the death. Others pointed out their families were trapped inside those walls too. The debate raged for hours until Vercingetorix ended it. "I united Gaul to fight for freedom," he said. "I will not let it die for my pride." He would surrender personally, take full responsibility, hope Caesar might spare the others. It was the decision of a true leader, sacrifice himself for his people. The ceremony became legendary. Vercingetorix donned his finest armor, mounted his best horse, and rode out from Alesia's gates alone. Approaching Caesar's position in full view of both armies, he circled the Roman commander's chair once, a final moment of Gallic pride. Then he dismounted and laid his weapons at Caesar's feet. Caesar remained seated throughout. The symbolism was deliberate and devastating. The greatest warrior Gaul had ever produced, kneeling before a seated Roman. In that moment, independent Gaul died forever. The aftermath was efficient and brutal. 80,000 warriors filed out of Alesia over 3 days, laying down their weapons in massive piles. Some prisoners, from tribes Rome needed as allies, were released. 40,000 others became slaves, distributed among Caesar's legions as payment for years of hard fighting. Vercingetorix received special treatment. Too valuable to simply execute, he was kept alive and imprisoned, a living trophy for Caesar's eventual triumph in Rome. 6 years later, during that triumph, he was paraded through Roman streets in chains, then ritually strangled in a prison cell. The cost of victory staggered the ancient world. 40,000 Gauls dead in just 2 days of fighting. Thousands more killed in the pursuit. The Gallic Wars overall claimed an estimated 1,000,000 lives, with another 1,000,000 enslaved. Entire tribes essentially ceased to exist. Alesia marked the end of organized Celtic resistance, the death of an independent civilization that had dominated Europe for centuries. But Caesar gained more than a victory. He gained Rome itself. His political enemies couldn't touch a general who'd conquered Gaul against impossible odds. The wealth from slaves and plunder made him richer than kingdoms. The loyalty of veterans forged in moments like Alesia would follow him across the Rubicon and into civil war. The engineering innovations became templates for centuries of Roman warfare. Military academies still study those double walls today. Napoleon visited the site, trying to understand how Caesar's mind worked. Every defensive battle plan since owes something to what happened on those September days, and the historical ripples extended further than anyone could imagine. Without a secure Roman Gaul, there's no buffer against Germanic tribes. Without that buffer, Rome falls centuries earlier. Without Roman stability, classical knowledge doesn't survive the Dark Ages intact. The trajectory of Western civilization fundamentally changed between those walls. Here's the truth at the heart of Alesia. Sometimes the craziest option is the only sane choice. Caesar faced complete destruction if he failed in Gaul. Normal strategies wouldn't achieve total victory, so he chose the insane path: trap himself between two armies, build his own tomb, and force the enemy to fight on his terms instead of theirs. 50,000 disciplined men defeated nearly 400,000 brave ones, not through superior numbers, but through preparation, engineering, and the absolute refusal to accept limitations. Fortune favors the bold became more than a saying that day. It became proven fact. Caesar buried 50,000 men alive and gave birth to an empire that lasted 1,000 years. Sometimes the most desperate strategies create the most enduring victories. Alesia teaches us that when faced with impossible odds, the answer isn't to retreat. It's to make the impossible possible through discipline, preparation, and pure audacious will. If this story of impossible victory hit different, smash that like button. Subscribe if you want more tales of history's most insane battles. Drop a comment telling me which military genius you want me to cover next. And share this with someone who needs to hear that sometimes the only way out is straight through the fire. Until next time.